So welcome to this training where I'm going to talk about Dr. Sarno's 12 daily reminders to heal. So we're going to explore the relevance of these reminders to conditions like ME, CFS, long COVID and related conditions. So his work has played a significant role in mind-body healing. For some people, mind-body approaches may be completely alien if they are wedded to the medical model way of looking at things. I've talked about that in other videos, so I won't go into that in great detail here. But my motivation of doing this video is that I think there's some information worth considering. I believe that information is power. The information I'm about to share may give you some insights and shed some light, and you may take away at least some of these reminders, and my hope is that they help you move forward towards your health goals. There is controversy about his approach. It's important to note that his theory of TMS, which I'll talk about in a moment, remains subject of debate within the medical community. Not all healthcare professionals endorse the approach that he takes. Okay, so if you are experiencing chronic pain, chronic health conditions, of course, consult your health provider and explore appropriate treatments options for your conditions. So if you are watching live, do say hello in the chat so I know you can hear me. Feel free to say where you are in the world. But I invite you to tap into your inner wisdom and to evaluate which of these 12 reminders are, number one, relevant to you, number two, needs tweaking, number three, are not relevant to you. So Donna's saying hello. Hi, Donna. So recognize that what others think, including Dr. Sarno, including me, is not as important as what you think. Okay? So some of these recommendations may not sit well with you. Okay? It's okay to discard them if that's the case. So I invite you just for a moment to close your eyes, and obviously only if it's safe to do so. And I invite you just to connect to that part of you that has the capacity for wisdom. There's a part of you that's shown up many times in your life where you were faced with a challenging situation or someone close to you was, and you just stepped up and responded in a resourceful way. I invite you just to recognise there's a part of you that has the capacity for patience, for playfulness and openness, for pragmatism. Pragmatism is a really useful quality to be cultivating, especially if you have a health challenge, because we need to be pragmatic. Okay? You have the capacity to be present in this moment. And I suspect you've had times where you felt present. Okay? There's a part of you that has the capacity for acceptance. And there's a part of you that has the capacity to discern what is appropriate in the situation. You have the capacity for calm, compassion, and trust. Consider that this part of you has shown up many times of your life. It's always there. It's like the blue sky, okay? We don't always see it. I invite you just to remind yourself that you have this part of you every day. So it's part of my morning routine when I wake up. One of the things I do is do a visualization which includes connecting to that part of me. So when you're ready, you can either carry on with your eyes closed or you can just open your eyes, whatever suits. If you want to keep your eyes closed and just listen, that's completely fine. Do whatever works for you. So who was Dr. Sarno? Dr. John Sarno was a physician, and he worked with people, particularly with pain, chronic pain, back pain, and he developed a mind-body approach to healing chronic pain. So, as I say, because he was focusing on pain, we might need to adapt some of these reminders for people with fatigue-related conditions. So he outlined these 12 daily reminders to help individuals heal from chronic pain and other psychosomatic disorders. So let's define psychosomatic. There are a number of definitions. Sometimes I hear people use a definition which I don't think is very helpful. So definition, I looked up a few definitions. These are the definitions that I landed on. Psychosomatic relates to the interplay between mental and physical health, specifically how emotional and psychological factors can impact physical symptoms. So psychosomatic disorders are conditions where emotional stress or psychological issues can exacerbate or complicate physical symptoms. So I hope it's clear from that definition. It is not saying that these conditions are all in your head. Okay, so let's be 100% clear about that. ME, CFS, fibromyalgia, long COVID, and related conditions are very real physical conditions. I know that because I had MECFS and fibromyalgia for about 8 years. Okay, so what we're considering is the question: are emotional and psychological factors impacting physical symptoms and hindering recovery? In my case, stress, i.e. emotional and psychological stress, resulted in me getting sick and staying sick. Okay, again, I've talked about that in other videos. I've talked about my story, so check out that video if you wish. Now, if that approach doesn't resonate, if you feel, well, actually psychological stress, emotional stress isn't an issue, then that's great. Then obviously you need to look at other approaches that can help you regain your health. But if you recognise that stress is an issue and maybe had contributed to you getting sick, then you might find what I'm about to say interesting. Okay, so these 12 reminders are part of his mind-body healing philosophy. Okay, so here are the 12 reminders, and I'd just be interested to know which of these kind of resonate. Okay, maybe which ones don't. I've certainly got some things to say about that, and I'll share some thoughts about each of these points as we go through. So the first one: pain is due to TMS. TMS stands for tension myositis syndrome. So it's a mind-body syndrome. And myositis refers to inflammation of the skeletal muscles rather than the pain being a result of structural abnormalities. I won't go into too much detail, but in his book, Healing Pain, which I've got in the next room, there's lots of examples where people had structural abnormalities, but they didn't experience pain. And he also gives examples of people being incorrectly diagnosed, being told that the pain was due to an abnormality, but actually he didn't think it made sense. Okay, so that's the first point. Pain is due to tension myositis syndrome. Second point: the direct reason for pain, according to Dr. Sarno, is mild oxygen deprivation. Now, there's some debate about this, okay? Others say that the oxygen deprivation is the result or is a sign of sympathetic arousal, i.e. being in fight-flight response. This can affect blood flow and cause oxygen deprivation. Third point: tension myositis syndrome, TMS, is a benign condition caused by repressed emotions. Okay, so he believed that TMS was not dangerous or harmful in of itself, and knowing that, understanding that, can help alleviate the fear and anxiety associated with chronic pain and other symptoms. Okay, so according to Dr. Sarno, repressed emotions and tension reduce blood flow and oxygen to certain parts of the body, leading to pain. So let's just clarify the difference between repressed and suppressed. If you've got any ideas of the difference, pop it in the chat. But I'll keep going because I know there's a bit of a time difference between me speaking and you hearing me. So repressed relates to unconsciously burying our emotions, whereas suppressed is more conscious. People are aware of their emotions but decide not to display them or respond to them or vent their emotions. Okay. Suppression, if we keep suppressing our emotions over the time, that can lead to repression. Okay. So why do we repress or suppress our emotions? What are your thoughts about that? Again, whether you're watching the live training or the replay, I'd be interested to know. What are your thoughts about why we suppress or repress emotions? Some reasons may be that we're not comfortable with certain emotions. Maybe we're trained to believe that it's not okay to experience certain emotions. It might be that people suppress emotions because of fear of conflict, fear of being judged. So repressed emotions may be anger, fear, sadness, frustration. Don says taught as a child. Yeah, that's common. That's a common thing that, parents not necessarily consciously teach their children that it's not okay to express their emotions. Okay? So there is this notion that suppressed emotions result in pain and, I would say, symptoms. I would suggest that emotions such as fear might not actually be repressed. For example, when I had MECFS, there was a lot of anxiety and fear around. I was generating a lot of anxiety because I couldn't trust my body. I was worried that if I did something, it would make me worse. Okay? And obviously, doing an activity and my body having to deal with the anxiety and worry of doing an activity was just further using up my fairly limited resources. Okay? But Dr. Sarno's belief is that these disorders are reversible, okay, and not progressive. So consider the following. Have you experienced times where you maybe had a chat to someone, it helped you kind of release your emotions, and you felt better? If you've had that experience, just put an R for release in the chat. Okay, certainly I've had that experience many times. All right, for example, I remember when I had MECFS, I had certain symptoms. I went to my doctor, I was feeling pretty stressed and, I was feeling fatigued, and went to chat to the doctor. The doctor reassured me that everything was okay, and I came out feeling a lot lighter, feeling more energy. So Ida says, thank you. You are welcome. All right. Don says, yeah, okay, so recognise that. Okay, so that's the first thing to consider. Second question, are there times when you felt better and you don't know why you felt better? Again, put a B for better in the chat if you recognise that. Certainly I had that experience. There were times when I felt better, and so Ida says for the last one. And what I now understand is I felt better because I was more relaxed. Okay, so does that make sense? That you have moments, periods where you just find that you're more at peace, and you notice that you feel better, your energy is better, you have a greater sense of optimism. Many people recognise that stress makes them worse, but they don't recognise that feeling calm, at peace, feeling present makes them feel better. Okay? So fourth principle, emotions, and particularly repressed anger, okay, are the key here. Okay? Repressed anger is what Dr. Sarno felt was driving these symptoms. Okay? Others suggest that there might be other emotions, anxiety, sadness, grief. As I said, it might not be repressed. It might be that we're experiencing anxiety, which we're very aware of. Okay? Consider that if someone's a people pleaser or very unassertive, then often there's some repression of emotions going on. And actually, sometimes people when I start working with them, they start to realise that they're actually carrying around a lot of rage when they feel safe enough to kind of connect to their emotions. Okay, someone, you know, imagine someone who's very unassertive, someone they're queuing up at the post office to post a letter or whatever. Someone pushes in front, says, "You don't mind, I'm in a bit of a hurry." They do mind, but they just say, "No, that's fine." So they're suppressing their emotions. We know that suppressing emotions actually can have an impact on your health. Okay, so fifth point, TMS exists to distract attention from emotions. Consider that for many people, it's quite difficult to deal with emotions. We tend to go into our head, create thoughts, create stories, catastrophize, rather than stay in our body and feel the emotions. Okay? Consider also that pain can stop us from doing stuff we don't want to do. And I've had clients who said that they recognize that sometimes they experienced pain and there was something that they didn't want to do, and the stress of not kind of speaking up generated pain in their body, and then it resulted in them not having to do that thing. And again, once they made that decision, "Oh, I'm not going to do that thing I don't want to do," they noticed they felt better. Okay, so as I say, there's evidence that emotions can cause ill health. If you want to know more about that, I really encourage you to check out the work of Dr. Gabor Mate. Okay, so many of us are not good at experiencing and processing emotions. So next, point 6. Since the body part, Dr. Sarno is talking a lot about the back, is basically normal, there is nothing to fear. Okay, that's his premise, but let's dive into that. Okay, I often see people saying, you know, practitioners, "You are not broken," okay, to people with MECFS. Now, when I first had MECFS, I would have found that challenging to get my head round because my body felt broken. Okay, my digestion wasn't working. I won't go into the detail of that, but I had physical evidence that my digestion was just not working properly. But what I came to realize is that my body was stuck in a state of sympathetic nervous system arousal, i.e. fight, flight. And that over a long time, because I was doing a very stressful job for 2 or 3 years, resulted in physical damage to my body. But it was reversible. But in order to heal that, I mean, I did, for certain things, take supplements, which helped to some degree, but I still wasn't well. What I needed to do is to get out of that sympathetic nervous system arousal and activate the parasympathetic nervous system healing response. And I've worked with lots of people over the last 16 years with MECFS fibromyalgia who recognise that they were stuck or spent a lot of time in sympathetic fight-flight arousal. Okay, when I activated the parasympathetic nervous system healing, rest and digest response, my body started healing. Okay, so point 7 needs some careful consideration. Point 7 is physical activity is not dangerous. When I first had MECFS, I didn't have any energy. I was literally sleeping 3 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the afternoon. I was having dinner, having a rest, going to bed about 9 o'clock and sleeping till 8, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. So the idea that I could do physical activity was absolutely alien to me. I don't think it would have been helpful. There are cases of people pushing through when they've had flu and they've ended up in hospital. There was a case where someone died because they were doing that. So I think we need to give this some consideration. So if you look at this chart, then if you're at level 1, you're in the red, you've got a flat battery, your approach to movement and activity is going to be very different to if you're at point 2 or 3. Okay, so with red you need to actually focus on activating the parasympathetic nervous system response if you recognize that you are in a state of stress. Okay, when I was in orange, then it was important for me to do appropriate amounts of activity. At times my fear was getting in the way, and obviously I was using up some of the energy by generating anxiety and stress. And if I wasn't generating the anxiety and finding an approach to movement that I felt comfortable with, then that would have been more efficient use of my resources. What is key is that when I had MECFS, I was telling myself it was dangerous, physical activity was dangerous, and at times that wasn't very helpful, okay? So Sarno encouraged individuals to engage in physical activity to increase blood flow and reduce the fear of movement that often accompanies chronic pain. But obviously MECFS, fibromyalgia, long COVID are different in that respect to chronic physical pain, okay? So I think we need to have a more strategic approach. When I train people doing my building resilience training, there's kind of 9 areas I focus on. One of those areas is all about approaching movement in a sustainable way, okay? So if you'd like to know more about that training, I'm going to be starting a group course in a couple of weeks. Then put the word course below this video and I'll send you a link where you can find out more. Okay, so point 8, Sarno said people with pain issues must resume all physical activity. So again, that tip might be fine for people with pain issues with no structural issue, but I think we need a more considered approach in relation to people with MECFS and similar conditions. As I've just said, for some people who are bedbound, trying to resume physical activity could be hugely problematic. It would be arrogant to assume that all people can't exercise because they're in sympathetic arousal, okay? So there may be other issues at play that need addressing. So for example, if someone is sensitive to mold and they're living in a moldy house, that's impacting their health, then obviously that needs to be addressed, okay? For example, when I had MECFS, I was diagnosed with candida and leaky gut syndrome by a doctor with degrees in nutrition and also a respected herbalist, okay? Now, these conditions aren't recognised by conventional medicine as being real conditions. However, my research seemed to confirm the validity of those diagnoses and explain symptoms I was experiencing. And some of the approaches to dealing with those I found helpful. So, for example, one of the side effects of having candida is that the overgrowth of yeast results in your blood becoming more acidic. And certainly that was my experience. So when I read that, I thought, oh, that's kind of what I assumed was going on anyway. All right. And I did a lot of juicing because I'd read that it helps counter the acidity. And I do think that helped. With leaky gut syndrome, one of the symptoms of that, your digestion isn't working properly and you have holes in your gut, which means food gets into your bloodstream, which means that you get sugar spikes and then your pancreas produces insulin and then you get a crash. And that's what I was experiencing. I'd eat and I'd feel absolutely exhausted. One thing that I found helpful was to eat half a grapefruit before my meal. That seemed to help with my digestion. And the doctor trained in nutrition said, well, actually grapefruit has enzymes which help your digestion, and he actually prescribed enzymes as one of the approaches. Okay, so going on a protocol for leaky gut syndrome really helped. I was able to tolerate exercise more, but I still wasn't well. And I think the reason I still wasn't well is because I was still in a state of stress, and therefore learning strategies and implementing those strategies to help put my body in the parasympathetic state helped. That involved learning how to spot some of the unconscious patterns that I was running that was putting my body in stress, okay? So these were things I wasn't noticing until I understood how to spot those patterns and then how to shift them, okay? Now, there are some brain training approaches that tell people to go and do something they love. Now, as I say, that was not the solution for me when I was absolutely depleted and bedbound. Trying to do that would have just led me to feel even worse because my body wasn't working properly. You know, I won't go into it in too detail. This is another video for another time. But Dr. Sarah Myhill explains that mitochondria function isn't working properly, and that explains why we have an energy overdraft. Okay, so that needs addressing. Okay, as I say, that's another topic for another time. So I had to wait till my body had more capacity. So when I moved from the red into the orange, then I was able to tolerate more activity, but I still had to have a strategic approach. Okay. Now, if someone had said to me when I was at my worst that one of the things that hinders recovery was being in a state of stress, and practicing techniques to activate the parasympathetic state can help the body's healing, I'm not sure how I would have responded to that. It might have been that I was able to hear that, but it also might have been that I might have heard the message that I'm generating stress and that's hindering my recovery. And if that was the case, then I would have beaten myself up and judged myself and felt upset. Okay. However, the truth was I was generating stress. Okay. You have to decide whether that's appropriate and relevant to you. Okay, but I was generating stress, and that I now see that was hindering my recovery, because as I started to implement those strategies to reduce my stress, there were noticeable differences. Okay, so it's easy for me to acknowledge that now, but at the time it might have been more challenging. So as I say, we need to take a strategic approach. We need to approach things in a way that feels appropriate for you. You need to be the judge, okay? We need to ensure that whatever we're doing feels safe, okay? If your battery is flat, I don't think just pushing through is necessarily going to be the right approach. However, consider the following. So for instance, if someone's battery is flat, then it's really important that we get into that parasympathetic state, because when we're in that state, the body starts to produce and store energy. Now, I do know people with MECFS, fibromyalgia, who have kind of broken through the fear. So I've got a friend who, when she learned brain training techniques, she was experiencing lots of sensations in her body, but she was using the tools, and what she says is she kind of got to the point where it was almost like breaking out of a shell, and she stopped being in fear. Okay, I had an experience once where I was doing this workshop, which was Friday night, Saturday and Sunday. On the Sunday morning, and this was really stretching me, taking me out of my comfort zone, because I wasn't used to being out of house for that amount of time. I remember leaving the house on the Sunday morning, and I was experiencing a lot of sensations, and I was saying to myself, am I mad doing this? But I decided that I was just going to do it, and I just kept telling myself, I am safe. I am safe. I trust in my decisions. And I kept doing that over and over again, literally all day. And then when I got to the course, I was just kind of feeling more relaxed because I was in a safe space, and I kind of felt the love and support of other people doing the course. And my physiology relaxed. And I really surprised myself, because all those symptoms disappeared. And even the next day, I felt okay. I went for quite a long walk, and that was kind of a eye-opener. Okay, that was quite shocking to me. Now, it's really important that we understand that if someone is in fight or flight, then just trying to behave like a normal person might not work. Okay, and I know people who've been told, oh, just behave like a normal, healthy person, and they have kind of crashed. All right. So you've got to be the judge of your approach. As I say, when I train people, I teach people how to approach things in a gradual way so that they can teach their body to feel safe. Okay. If someone says, oh, I'm going to run a marathon tomorrow, and they've got ME, then their body might go into, fear. If they say, actually, I can walk for a minute, and if I feel any sensations, I can just pause, I can breathe, I can relax, I maybe sit down. I had a client who found that when she went shopping in a mall, even though she was able to walk for 20 minutes, there was a kind of mental block. And I said, we looked at it, and she said, we explored, well, maybe if you notice some sensations, you can just sit down for a bit and just check out what's going on. And I'll come to the next point in a minute, which is relevant, okay? So use your judgment, okay? Whilst engaging in physical activity, it's important to do it safely without fear, and therefore we need to get our approach right. But we need to also understand that our fear can really limit us and actually can keep us stuck. So we need to overcome that fear, okay? So, point 9, I'll not be concerned or intimidated by physical symptoms. So what would it be like to be unconcerned about symptoms? That doesn't mean that we have to just push through, but what would it be like as if you were experiencing a symptom and you were just relaxed about it, having a strong sense that this will pass, okay? One of the patterns that I notice a lot, and this is a pattern that I ran as well, is that we experience symptoms and we generate stress, we catastrophize, we say to ourselves, I'm never going to get well, okay? And one of the shifts that you can make, I invite you to make, is to relabel symptoms as sensations. And I suggest that because often people find that word less emotive, okay? Dr. Sarno suggests that we talk to our brain. He recommends that you address your subconscious mind and emotions, communicating that the pain is no longer necessary. Okay? Think about that. Just what would it be like if you were saying to yourself, actually, I don't need this pain. I'm going to start just being relaxed even when I'm experiencing these sensations. The next point is point 10. Shift your attention from physical symptoms to emotional issues. Okay? So instead of focusing on the physical symptoms, saying, oh no, this is so bad, tune in and explore what might be going on emotionally. So a really simple exercise you can do is to ask this question. What emotions am I feeling? What emotions am I feeling right now? What emotions do I notice even when I'm hearing some of these reminders, okay? If you notice that some of them cause a reaction in you, then just check in. What is going on there? All right? If you notice a symptom or sensation, ask that question. What emotion am I experiencing right now? What's happened that may have resulted in pain or symptoms or sensations? I was working with a client and they recognised that they started to feel tired when someone asked them a question about someone they were having difficulty with. And actually I had that experience as well. A friend of mine asked me about someone who I was really having challenges with, and as soon as they asked that question, my energy just drained. My friend said, what's happened? Your energy seems to have left your body. Okay. So that just, again, illustrated to me the power of our emotions. Okay. Point 11. I am in control, not my subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind is running on patterns. Okay. If you've had certain experiences a number of times, then your subconscious mind can kick in and respond in a particular way. All right. I gave you an example earlier of repressing emotions. So Dr. Sarno suggests that we reject the notion that there's a structural issue and embrace the idea that, repressed emotions is playing a part. He suggests that people return to activities, but obviously do that in a way that feels safe, okay? But that was a key part of his approach. Recognize that if you're worrying about pain, worrying about symptoms because of past experiences, you're bringing the past into the present, okay? So, point 12, think psychological at all times, not physical. Okay? If we're saying to ourselves, I have to be really careful because otherwise I might overdo it, we are putting our body in fear. And that's an extra load for the body to deal with. If we start operating from the perspective, I am safe, and I can work on what's going on emotionally, I can embrace the notion that there's something going on at another level that's not physical. Acknowledging the role of emotions and psychological factors in pain is crucial to healing. Now, I've covered a lot. That's a lot to get your head around. So feel free to watch that video again. But I encourage you to just focus on the points that feel most relevant to you. If some of them feel, as I said at the beginning, like they're not a good fit, then just discard them for now. Okay? So if you've got any questions, do get in touch. As I say, if you'd like to know more about the Building Resilience course, I'm starting a group course in a couple of weeks, then put the word course below. Like, follow, leave a comment, and wishing you great health. Keep going. You've got this. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.